James catches, puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound Bosch. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
All right, folks. The away team is back from our little sabbatical.
Hiatus. Yes, we're back from hiatus, let's say.
I was looking online. It's been 9 days since we recorded.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a long time.
I know. It didn't feel like that long, but shit happened, and here we are.
Work happened, you know? That's a novel thing, but it is back in business, so we'll work around that. But yeah, good to be recording again.
Some of us have work.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we've got about a week in the books for the playoffs.
Yep, about 3 games per series, some interesting, well, no, I don't know if there's a single interesting result, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's been, and just before we start, we're recording this midway through the Saturday games. OKC Houston hasn't happened yet. Indiana versus Miami just happened, and we do not know the results of Portland, LA either.
Yes, so that might change things, but let's just say we have our suspicions.
Yeah, look, the series so far have been pretty bad.
Milwaukee and the Lakers losing their first games was pretty exciting to see, but I think things have come a little bit more down to earth for the Game 2s and the Game 3s, especially some series that looked to be competitive before the playoffs started that have just been anything but. So we'll get into those. We'll talk about all of that and see if there have been any redeeming qualities to some of these less interesting series. And yeah, so should we just start with the one that just finished? Rest in peace to the Indiana Pacers. A first round out for, what is this, the 5th year in a row now? And they had a pretty good thing coming into it. We were pretty excited when we recorded the episode, but let's just say in the last few minutes of this game, the closeout wasn't handled very well. The execution on some of the plays after timeouts were not very good, and the outstretched nature of some of the positions that these players had to play, especially lacking Sabonis, became painfully obvious. So at least they've kept it fairly close. Hasn't been blowouts, but still, it's hard to watch sometimes.
Today was a must-win.
Yeah.
I think we can agree. It was a 2-point game midway through the fourth quarter, and it was really anybody's game, right? And it just became painfully obvious to me going down the stretch that the Pacers' offense just wasn't dynamic enough to get them easy baskets. And that's not to say you have to have a crazy dynamic offense at the end of the game. A lot of teams will just ISO with their best player. But I don't think the Pacers have anybody that is good enough at isolation to warrant taking on that task.
Right. I mean, even though Brogdon had a very good game, this game, the last few games, you've really seen the limits of him as being the best guy on the floor. Like, his assist numbers have been really good, right?
Yeah.
You look at the games and you're like, wow, this guy's averaging probably almost 10 assists, if not more, through the series. And yet, when you watch him try to execute these plays, there's a stagnancy to the offense, and it often forces him into a drive, and he's just not an elite finisher on drives. And he's not finding the right kickouts, and the team as a whole is suffering for it. Even if this game he kept them in it, his efficiency just isn't that good to allow you to run too many plays through that and expect to win. Right.
It seemed like down the stretch they were either running an isolation for Oladipo, an isolation for Brogdon, or an isolation for the GOAT, TJ Warren. So, look, like I said, teams will run isolations late in the game. The problem is these guys aren't dynamic enough at finishing, and Miami played very well defensively. They were closing out on the drives from these isolations really fast. TJ Warren's never going to pass out of an isolation, so You can just triple team him as he's driving. I think it's really interesting, though, because on the other side of the ball, Miami has a really dynamic offense.
That's been a factor as well, because like you said, not only are they tiring them out on offense by just swarming them and closing out really aggressively and keeping their timing off sync so that they can't even get a shot off, on offense they're running such a dynamic offense, this fluid offense that forces you to always stay on your man on the defensive end, and then by the fourth quarter, you don't have the energy to close out with any gusto.
Yeah, I mean, they have amazing isolation players in Butler, Dragic, and Nunn to a lesser degree. They've got amazing off-ball players with Harrow and Duncan Robinson, who's just a flamethrower.
Yeah.
And then you've got a big man who can facilitate, drive. I mean, Bam does it all. They're just a very dynamic offense, you know?
Yeah, you just really don't know who the ball is going to, and when they finally get it, it's just so hard to stop them. You have to make a sacrifice on some end, especially when you have these elite perimeter shooters everywhere. It is kind of a talent mismatch in some ways, but also the execution and the coordination is very good. I think in a way it does remind me of the OKC-Houston series in a bit, because you do see how something that worked during the regular season might be exposed and outmatched in the postseason when you come up against a team that doesn't seem like almost perfectly suited to disrupt your offense, you know? And when you're the Pacers and you rely so much on 2-point plays, when Miami's just bombing threes throughout the entire game, those aren't going to get you back in it. That's another issue. No matter how efficiently you convert the mid-rangers, once Miami has enough threes in the bank, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and the defense by the Pacers is good. It's not good enough to account for how outmatched they are on offense, I don't think.
Definitely not. And Miles Turner in particular, just not having Domantas Sabonis and forcing Miles Turner to play that interior game almost by himself. I mean, who do you have? Jakar Sampson to come in?
SpongeBob Sampson.
SpongeBob. You know, like, it's not enough. And, you know, Miami, they have a pretty complete roster with a lot of guys who are playing out of their minds. Like, Kelly Olynyk is making plays that are just making me say, wow, it's crazy.
Okay, we're just gonna hit every series and just do 5 to 10 minutes on each series. So,
should we do the Rockets and the Thunder?
Yeah, might as well. We mentioned them, you know. Yeah, so the Rockets and Thunder. It is the first test for the small ball lineup in the playoffs. You know, when they traded for Robert Covington and ejected all of their centers into the nethersphere, the old school commentators were saying this might get them some wins in the regular season, which was arguable. I think they were 9-8 with Covington.
Yeah.
They were a game above 500.
Yeah, they had a fast start, but they kind of had a lot of issues going. I think they lost to Phoenix and stuff too.
Yeah. They weren't blowing teams away.
No.
But so far, I think we've seen with the Thunder that it's been really effective.
Yeah.
I'm really curious as to whether or not that is a stylistic issue for the Thunder, or if this trend is going to continue and these small ball lineups are going to continue to be effective against other teams. The issue with the Thunder is they are so not pass reliant, right? They rely so much on isolations where you try to get Chris Paul or Dennis Schroeder or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander switched onto a big man. And against Houston, there's just no big man to be switched onto. So there's really not an easy target for exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really care if you switch him on to whoever. They just have an answer to everything. And they've also just their defense has been playing very well synchronized and just shutting out any possibility of getting off a clean shot. And I don't think Steven Adams has been doing enough, because they have been playing him very well too. But his rebounding advantage that he should have against these guys, which you'd think would be crazy, is just being neutralized by the fact that Houston is so freely swarming him.
I do think he has been, at times, not assertive enough. There was a moment, I think, in Game 2 when he got switched onto Eric Gordon deep in the post and then just passed out of it for a contested 3.
Yeah, his decision-making has not been ideal in that he is always looking for the pass first, which you'd think, if you're playing against a team like Houston, Steven Adams should be one of your biggest offensive outlets.
Yeah, I don't think that he needs to be scoring 20 points per game on these mismatches, but it should be getting your team 10 points every game, I think.
Yeah, at least.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because going into it, I remember on our pod with Dylan, we were saying that Steven Adams is going to have a big game because of these mismatches. And we just haven't seen that. Right now it's 0-2, and I mean, we all want OKC to win tonight, but They just haven't looked very good so far, and I'm not optimistic.
And you have to understand, too, that these wins that the Houston Rockets are getting are coming off of fairly, pedestrian, hardened performances, too.
Yeah.
And without Westbrook. So all of those things combined really... Houston's playing great team ball right now.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that they're doing, you just see the way that their offense moves, and they're distributing the ball really well. They're moving it around the arc like it's nothing, They're exploiting the Thunder's willingness to glue a guy to someone on the perimeter because everyone on the perimeter seems like a huge danger when you're Houston and you're getting these threes off. But I don't know what the Thunder can do with the personnel that they have to stop Houston when Lou Dort, give him credit, he was a big reason that Harden didn't have a great game 2.
He was great in game 2,
He
Lou.
did
Yeah.
everything he could. He did everything he could. But the problem is you're sacrificing offensive firepower when you put Lou Dort out there when the Rockets are playing very savvy defense and he's a rookie. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know.
Here's a question I was just thinking about. Do you think this is in any way an indictment on Westbrook? Because it seems like they're playing, in my opinion, some of the best ball I've seen them play all year as Westbrook's been sitting.
I do think that Westbrook, on the defensive end, not having Westbrook in the lineup has helped them.
Yeah.
Because they have 5 guys that are putting their hearts in and playing such inspired defense.
And the issue is Westbrook is always going to be the smallest defender on these Houston lineups. When you replace him with another rangy wing like Danielle House, it just adds one more defensive weapon.
Yeah, and also Jeff Green has been playing unbelievably well.
Yeah, he looks like he's rolled the clock back 8 years.
It's ridiculous. I don't know how they got it out of him, but it's amazing. And when he's playing that well, what can you do? Also, just one last thing about the Rockets that you have to give them credit for is their turnover numbers have been outstanding. I mean, that says as much about OKC and the way that they are maybe not going for enough deflections or steal. I don't know what they can do because the second you go for a steal, you're giving up coverage on some end.
Yeah.
So it's they're so scared of letting off their man that 1, they're tiring themselves out because Houston's just moving the ball around effortlessly. And 2, it's not getting any results. Houston's still shooting well. They're not turning over the ball. And it seems a little bit hopeless. I mean, if Chris Paul or someone has a great game and is just shooting lights out, I can see them eking out a win. Probably not 2. Houston's system just seems to be neutralizing every advantage that they have.
Yeah. All right, moving along. Let's hit... Man, I don't want to do Orlando, Milwaukee.
It's just tough.
Let's just do it. Why not? All right, here is our 10 seconds on Orlando, Milwaukee.
It's 1 and 2 right now. Or
yeah, I don't know what I put. I put what I thought it should be.
Yeah.
0 and 3.
Yeah. So Orlando had a really good game 1.
Yeah.
They kept Giannis. I mean, I wouldn't say they kept him in check. Giannis still had a crazy game, but Middleton just shat the bed. No one else really showed up, and Orlando had a really good shooting game and won the game by a lot. I mean, it was kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, look, after game 1, everyone was saying, okay, Vucevic has exploited the one hole in Milwaukee's defense, which is that on pick and rolls, Brook Lopez falls back, right? He's like a free safety in the NFL. And if you've got a center that can pick and pop for threes, it is a problem for the Bucks. I mean, sure, it might have won them one game, but now Milwaukee's figured it out. Not to mention, they are totally torching Vucevic on defense every possession. I mean, he can't keep up with Giannis. Middleton had a terrible first 2 games and came back really strong in game 3. I always knew that Middleton was going to pull it together. If you look at that guy's playoff stats, it's insane. In 2018, he shot 60% from the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think now that I'm looking at game 3 right now, and one thing that you were saying is Vucevic is getting covered now, right?
Yeah.
Instead of he's going 2 of 8 from 3 now, instead of the 5 of 8 or whatever he went in game 1, which is what basically propelled the Magic forward. One thing that is really concerning for the Magic is that they shot almost 50% from 3 on 40 attempts today, and they lost by 14 points. Right?
Wow, I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah. So, I just don't know what they can do. If they're playing that well, for the most part, I think their bench played really well, or the maybe garbage time minutes. But whatever it is, defensively, the Magic are, I think, a good team. I think Steve Clifford is a commendable coach. I think looking at them at the end of game 2, when they were down by 15 with a minute left and still playing crazy defense and forcing like 3 turnovers on 3 consecutive plays for the Bucks is really fun to see. You know, if you're still watching the game, it's cool to see a team care that much, even though they know it's already over, as opposed to, let's say, the Lakers, who gave up on a 5-point deficit with 30 seconds left in game 1.
Yeah.
That's like, what the fuck are you doing? But, I mean, the facts are they don't have Jonathan Isaac for another year. They don't have Aaron Gordon.
In game 3, they were putting Markelle Fultz on Giannis. That was how dire their wing defender situation was.
Yeah, I mean, when that's the situation, like, there's really not many options. I mean, they were starting a guy, Gary Clark, who averaged like 3.5 points per game this season. It's a depleted team on an already talent-starved roster. Winning game 1 is good for them, but, you know, back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not much else to say. I hate that we don't get to see Jonathan Isaac try to defend Giannis. That would have been really fun and a really awesome playoff test to develop Isaac. But he's gone, and this series just isn't that interesting anymore.
Yep. Well, another series. Let's just do the other 1v8 matchup, Portland versus the Lakers.
Okay.
So that series, I mean, again, game 1, very exciting. And we don't know what game 3 is going to be like. But game 2 did not look good for Portland. I mean, that game was over by the half, basically.
Yeah.
And Damian Lillard injuring himself, although it seems it wasn't that bad, luckily, was definitely not something that you wanted to see.
No, the Damian Lillard injury on top of the Zach Collins injury. I mean, going into the bubble, we were so excited about the fact that this team that had had to deal with so many injuries throughout the year was finally together and healthy. And it just seems like that dream is falling apart now. And without their depth, I just don't know how they can stand with the Lakers.
Yeah. In game 1, Portland snuck out a win.
Yeah.
But the Lakers were shooting like 15% from 3. Like, no one could hit a 3 to save their lives. The only real way that the Lakers were consistently scoring was just getting transition buckets, because Portland has a really bad defense where no one knows what's happening when the ball starts going the other way on the court. And I think in game 2, when, as expected, the shooting regressed to the mean, the Lakers had no problem dispatching Portland, who then had their own horrible shooting game.
You know, there have been a couple interesting things, I think, with this series. I think game 1 highlighted the importance of the role players on the Lakers making shots.
Yeah.
Which I think going forward is going to be something that we're going to have to really watch for, especially against good teams. You know, If Danny Green's going to come out and have an 0 for 5 game from 3, they're probably going to lose that game.
Yeah, it does.
Especially the wings.
Yeah. If you're a Lakers fan, even if the Lakers sweep the rest of the series, I would not feel that confident, because the role players do win you championships in a way.
Yeah.
You need there to be a synergy between your stars and your role players. And if the role players are just playing poorly or without any conviction on both ends, you know, like, that's the really bad recipe. And if whatever LeBron said about there's something bad going on in the bubble that we're not going to tell you about has, you know, something to do with the chemistry of the team, or like Dwight Howard's being annoying all the time, I don't know what it could be. In terms of teams that were getting doubted in the run-up to the playoffs, I think the Bucks are in a much better position based on how they've played than the Lakers. I think if the Lakers continue playing like they did in the last game and hitting their shots consistently, and LeBron didn't even have that good of a game, you know?
Yeah, I just think when you talked about synergy between the stars and the role players. When the role players are playing well, it's not only going to equate to a better box score, right? It's just going to make the offense easier for LeBron and AD.
Yeah.
There's going to be more spacing. You're not going to leave guys open. Better passing, flipping the pass around, the arc, that sort of stuff. I just think it's something to watch for.
Yeah, definitely. And just one little, just give kudos to one of the Portland players that I've really been enjoying watching, Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah.
Playing amazingly. He really was not getting the ball enough in game 2 when he was on fire, just hitting a bunch of threes, really killing it. And, well, I mean, he hit 2 threes, but they were pretty big momentum threes. Let's tone it down a bit. But his defense on LeBron is really more what I've been enjoying watching, because he is playing like a bulldog on him. He is not letting up. He's keeping himself in front of LeBron, frustrating him. Like, LeBron looked so pissed off after game 1 because Gary Trent and Carmelo Anthony were somehow, like, doing everything in their power to bother him. You know, that's a really good sign for Portland in the future. If Gary Trent can become a solid 3-and-D guy in the league, that would be a huge addition.
For sure. I mean, he definitely has the confidence already. He approaches the task of guarding the best player in the league with so much confidence, you know? And on offense, I think throughout the bubble, even in the 8 games prior to the playoffs, he was awesome. I mean, he was probably their third option, sometimes fourth, depending on how Nurkic was going to play that night, who has also looked really good in this series, especially game 1. R.I.P. to Nurkic's grandma. So, I think that's pretty much all I got for you.
Yeah, just a quick thing also.
Sure.
The C.J. McCollum back thing is clearly going to be an issue. If he's going to be throwing up bricks every night, like, you know, he's a good player. It really is uncharacteristic for him to have this many bad games in a row. I guess he was pretty good in the play-in game, but it is a huge liability when you have a guy that's not really particularly good on defense. His main purpose is to get you shots, and he's shooting 6 of 16 and 1 of 5 from 3, and it's not even just that the shots are not going in, it's the decision-making is leading to bad shots, too. No willingness to pass out, throwing up circus shots. That's really something that they're going to have to resolve, or they're going to shoot themselves out of the series.
Agreed, for sure. Why don't we go back to the East and just quickly hit, I think we can agree, the least exciting series of the playoffs, Brooklyn versus Toronto, which is currently 0 games to Brooklyn and 3 to Toronto.
Yeah, and 2 of those 3 were very clear blowouts.
Yeah, I think I looked at the average point differential and it's like 18.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, but what do you expect? You're playing against a group of guys that were in the G League or out of the league before the bubble, and they played really well in the seeding games. Like, they brought a fight every day, but, I mean, they got blown out by Orlando in the first game. It shouldn't have been much of an illusion that they were going to give the Raptors that much trouble. They're given the fight. The fight's just not good enough. The Raptors, like, they don't even care that much.
I mean, I hate to say this because, look, they're not going to be a good matchup for any team because their roster is just so stripped of NBA talent right now. But they're a particularly bad matchup against Toronto. And they've had some matchups that I think the Nets thought were going to be more advantageous for them than they actually ended up being. Like, one of the matchups I've been watching was Fred VanVleet versus Karis LeVert, because I found it very interesting that Nick Nurse started Fred VanVleet on LeVert, right? VanVleet's giving up probably 5 inches in that matchup, and LeVert has been a really good facilitator, right? He got 15 assists in game 1 and 11 in game 2, but in those games, he was 10 for 36 from the field. You can tell Fred's just like getting up underneath him, doing a solid job contesting shots, not letting him get easy drives to the rim, which is one of Karis LeVert's big assets, I think. And then on the other end, VanVleet is doing whatever he wants to LeVert.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, VanVleet's been unbelievable this series. And I think another thing that has been frustrating LeVert and preventing him from scoring as much as he's used to is that, yeah, while VanVleet might be the primary defender, pretty much every time the Nets bring the ball back up the court, Nick Nurse does not care who's on him because he is pretty confident. I mean, they often slot like OG Anunoby onto him. You know, they're like, OG, cover him. And then they switch a lot and basically prevent him from driving to the rim.
Yeah.
Because that's where he's most dangerous. But it's not a huge deal to them because I think they know that pretty much everyone that's in their lineup is going to do a perfectly fine job guarding all the other 4 guys on the Nets lineup. I mean, I think I saw VanVleet matched up with Jared Allen a few times. Like, and then Jared Allen on VanVleet, and he's like standing 10 feet back, and VanVleet's like 10 feet behind the 3-point line and just throws one up. Like, it's been tough. And they've done a great job containing Jared Allen as well. You know, like, he didn't have a shot attempt in, I think, game 3. Yeah,
I mean, he's the sort of player that Marc Gasol is going to eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
Right? Gasol just has the experience and the technique, the technical skills to box Allen out to where Allen's not going to get the rebounds that he usually gets, and to push Allen around on defense and make sure that he's not in his spots.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that, just to get back to Karis LeVert for a bit, one of the reasons that he was getting so many assists in those first 2 games was because the role players were actually shooting pretty well.
Yeah.
When that disappeared in Game 3 and Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot forgot how to shoot, went 2 of 11, those assists also dried up. He was a huge reason. Like, his play has been pretty great.
Man, he was really good in Game 1.
Yeah.
6 for 9 from 3. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he went 3 of 18 in Game 3. I mean, that's rough. That's definitely going to hit your confidence after you've been playing so well for such a long stretch of games. And, I mean, with Joe Harris gone, Jared Allen locked up by Marc Gasol, he was really, like, one of their best options.
Yeah, just to talk about TLC, one of the things that I thought was interesting is the switch from Rudions Kurucs in the starting lineup to TLC. Kurucs was terrible in Game 1, 16 minutes and minus 16 for the game. And he was the primary defender on Siakam, who didn't have a good game. He was 4 for 13 for the game. But I'd wager to say at least 3 of those field goals were in the first quarter against Kurucs. Kurucs couldn't guard him at all, and he was also terrible on offense. I did think it was a good idea to switch Kurucs and TLC for Game 2. But the problem there is TLC is also not a good matchup on Siakam, and Siakam had a much better game in Game 2.
Yeah.
He's just giving up too much height and size, and I don't think TLC's athleticism, which is underrated, I think, makes up for the mismatch physically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also, Kurucs, like, dude, why are you elbowing, or no, why are you shouldering OG Anunoby in the head? Like, dude, come on. And then flopping. That is not a great look.
No.
So that's enough of that.
Yeah.
I need to fucking go
Hold
brush
on
my
one
teeth
sec,
after.
yeah. I was holding that one in that whole segment, yeah.
All right, so who do we have left? Let's move on to...
I can't do Philly Boston after that.
No.
Let's
Utah,
cleanse our
Denver.
palate with some Utah Denver.
Yeah, I mean, that series has looked a little lopsided over the last 2 games. I would not count Nuggets out that fast. I think they have looked pretty bad in the last 2 games, but it doesn't seem like they should be playing as badly. In fact, the reason that it's been so bad is because the Jazz are shooting like all-time great numbers.
Well, it's like, why are they shooting all-time great numbers? They have a team that's stripped of one of their best offensive weapons, and yet they're scoring 138 points per 100 possessions.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's insane.
But, like, I watch the games, and a lot of those threes are heavily contested. Like, I don't know if it's an issue with the way that they're contesting them, but Mike Conley went 7 of 8 in the last game.
Yeah.
The baby bump, I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah, but the problem with Denver is they're starting now 3 enormous liabilities on defense. And 2 of those guys, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, have to guard 2 of the biggest threats on offense. Rudy Gobert has been getting tons of rebounds. He's slipping in, getting offensive rebounds and putbacks. He's spinning around Nikola Jokic and pulling out weird post moves. Like,
yeah,
I think he's been underrated in terms of his production on offense.
And I mean, Jokic on the other end has also had some pretty good shows against Gobert as well. Like,
yeah.
He went like 28, 11, and 6 against him the other night, on really, really good shooting. And I mean, when he's playing that well, when Michael Porter Jr. is playing outstandingly as well, I think it does come down to a lack of defense. And I think Gary Harris is a huge loss. I mean, I think people talk shit about Gary Harris a lot for being an offensive liability, but you see how useful he was on the defensive end now that they don't have him.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. One thing that I'm looking out for, especially now, is it better to push Michael Porter Jr. back to the bench and start Jeremy Grant again? Because Grant is a really solid defender. I think your offense might suffer a little bit, but it might bolster the second unit in terms of scoring.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I think something's got to change with Denver because right now the defense is just all-time epically terrible.
And be surprised by that considering how many like huge guys they have on there. But there is a lack of defensive discipline, I think. And of course, it's very disheartening when you put all this effort in to staying right by your guy, and then Donovan Mitchell just splashes a heavily contested three in your face. But like, it's not going to help to play at such a slow pace and let him have them.
Yeah, the other thing that I've been looking at is, okay, game 1 was a win for Denver because Jamal Murray was able to go off in the fourth quarter in overtime. I was interested to see what would happen in game 2 and 3, what sort of adjustments would be made. For some reason, they started the game with Joe Ingles on Jamal Murray, which didn't make any sense to me. And in game 2 and 3, they had Royce O'Neal guarding him, and he went from, 36 points in game 1?
Yeah, something like that.
To 14 points in game 2 and 12 points in game 3. So, if Murray can't put it together and start scoring on, albeit much better defenders, it's just going to be a really tough series for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge surprise because I think a lot of people were writing off Utah after losing Bogdanovich and after playing fairly whatever in the bubble games. But to be fair, I think they were specifically losing games to slide into the 6th seed to face Denver instead of Houston. Very smart decision. So props for them coming up with that.
And we got to talk about Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah,
He's been unbelievable.
Outstanding.
He's starting to make the Dwayne Wade comparisons not unbelievable. I mean, he kind of plays like him. He's starting to get to the point where he is really good at doing those Dwayne Wade, baiting the defender in the mid-range and then jumping into the body of the defender for extra fouls. He's obviously an amazing attacker and has really made great strides in terms of his finishing and his shooting from the mid-range. It's just been an amazing series, I think, on all levels for Mitchell.
He's been distributing better, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it as well. There are so many options that he has on offense that it's almost impossible to guard him at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so let's hope that Denver pulls it together so that it's not a gentleman's sweep. But if Conley continues playing out of his mind, that might just be the thing that pushes them over the edge.
Even if it's a gentleman's sweep, it will make the second round very interesting because I think other teams were thinking that Utah would be a pushover team, and they've shown in the playoffs that they're not. Even without Bojan Bogdanovic, they're a really solid team, and they're going to give any team in the second round a test.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess now that we've gotten that out of the way, it's time to dig back in to the bowl of shit.
Yeah, let's end with the high note and then hit Philly-Boston first.
Yeah, Philly-Boston. What's going on, guys?
Yep, 0-3. Boston's won 3 games, and Joel Embiid has looked really bad.
Well, I mean, his stats look great.
Yeah.
His stats look amazing. He's playing insanely well if you just look at the box score, but the lack of leadership, I think, and other intangibles are really coming through if you actually watch the games.
Yeah, it's the biggest discrepancy between box score and eye test that I think I've ever seen. If you watch the games, you can see he's just got this general malaise about him. He looks upset all the time. He's not communicating with his teammates. When his teammates make a mistake, he is berating them. And I think it's just seeping into the entire ethos of the team. Like, all of the role players look sometimes scared and other times agitated, and they're not hitting shots. And you wonder, are they not hitting shots and getting frustrated with themselves, or are they frustrated with themselves and the team and that's why they're not hitting shots? It's just it's a very strange emotional experience to watch this team.
Yeah, I mean, they give up somewhere in the middle of the third, I think. I mean, you see the cracks start forming after the end of the first. But by the middle of the third, if like they're already doing relatively poorly, like not even that bad, like let's say they're down by 12, but it's like, oh, we're just going to lose forever. There's no sense of hustle or urgency or no desire to get yourself out of the hole. Like, it's just wallowing. It's sad. Like, yeah, it sucks to get blown out in the playoffs, especially when you had such high expectations. And, you know, to give them credit, they did put up a fight in game 3.
Yeah.
That was not a blowout in any sense of the word. It was really a close game until a series of just horrible decisions and bad plays on Philly's end that, I mean, after that, okay, you guys are allowed to give up, but geez, clear path foul, multiple turnovers from Embiid. What the hell?
Yeah, you're totally right about the tempo of the game. In game 3 especially, they were ahead by like 10 points in the first quarter. And then it just, as the game goes on, they seem to unravel both in terms of team ethos and in terms of just productivity.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of poor coaching decisions in this matchup. I think even if they were to somehow win 4 games in a row, which, let's face it, is not going to happen, Brett Brown would be fired this season.
I would hope so.
I mean, he's deserved a firing.
Yeah, he's done everything in his power to force the hand of the management to fire him. It's just insane to see them do the exact same things over and over, to see the players that are too scared to throw an entry pass to Joel Embiid because they're so bad at throwing entry passes that they can almost guarantee it's going to be a turnover. I saw Josh Richardson try to throw the ball to Embiid. They were 10 feet away from each other maybe. And Josh Richardson just does this weird, I don't even know how to describe it. It's barely a pass, and it's so slow that I think Daniel Tice just got one hand on it and it started going the other way. And then, you get frustrated with each other after that. And Embiid, to be fair to Josh Richardson, Embiid was doing a terrible job sealing off his defender.
Yeah.
So it's a lack of effort and execution that are just leading this team that has so much talent on paper to play terribly and to let that get to their heads and continue playing terribly. I will also say that it's not just Brett Brown. One of their biggest issues is they don't have a starter caliber playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have Shake Milton, who's really just more of a shooting guard, I think.
Yeah.
Then you have Alec Burks, who I guess is a point guard, but is really not amazing or anything. I mean, he was, I guess, good for the Warriors and he's been shooting well for the Sixers. But if he's running your pick and roll and you had, let's just go back in history. Let's wind back the clock a little bit. You had TJ McConnell before you decided to let him go. And then you had Trey Burke until February when you waived him to open up a roster spot for the Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson trade. Both of those guys would have been way better in that position.
Yeah, I mean, even Alec Burks, he had a really good game 1. And then in game 2, Brett Brown didn't put him in until 18 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah, no,
he didn't have a good game in game 2, but still, it's super weird.
Yeah, or after someone goes off and scores 3 buckets in a row, Brett Brown's good job, no, sit your ass down. It's so bizarre. I don't know how anyone with 2 eyes can watch that and keep Brett Brown in his position.
On the other side of the ball, Boston has looked amazing.
Yeah, they're going crazy. Tatum is taking over.
Tatum's taking over. All of the role players are playing amazing. Kemba Walker started looking really good. Even Marcus Smart, he's hitting threes again.
Yeah, that's scary.
And then on defense, I mean, you talked about the difficulty that Philly's having throwing entry passes into the paint for Joel Embiid. A lot of that is schemed by Boston. They have been playing amazing defense in terms of denying those passes. Doubling Embiid when it's very clear that they're trying to get the ball to him. Swarming him when he gets the ball. Swarming him off of bad shooters, which is really important. It's just been a masterclass by Boston.
Are there any good shooters on Philly right now? Everyone's shooting 20% from 3 or something. It's crazy.
I mean, there are some theoretically good shooters, you
Sure.
know. Korkma is, I think Alec Burks is theoretically okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Tobias Harris has a nice stroke. Shake Milton.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris and Josh Richardson and Al Horford, all of them going cold at the exact same time for 3 games in a row, you can't win.
Yeah, and Al Horford, just really fast, and we'll move on. You can't be a number, 3, 4 option on this team and score 6 points in game 1.
No.
That's just pathetic.
I mean, did he score any better in the other 2 games?
I think he got a little bit more. No, that's not true. He scored He scored 4 points in game 2, minus 18 for game 1 and minus 11 for game 2.
He scored 6 points again in game 3.
I mean, it's just, he's scoring like SpongeBob Sampson type stat lines.
Yeah, except SpongeBob Sampson plays better defense. I won't go that far.
SpongeBob Sampson, yeah, man, he locked down Embiid that one game.
I'm sure they're just harassing Al Horford in the locker room. That's why he's just giving up and it's like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna help my other team win. Who knows? He's playing like a double agent. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, enough of that. Goodbye, Philly.
And now we'll end the pod with Dallas versus Los Angeles, which up until the Luka Doncic injury that happened last night, which we still don't know the severity of it. Last I heard, we were waiting on an MRI. It's an ankle injury. It was looking like this was going to be the most competitive series. And, hopefully Luka comes back and it's still competitive. But so far, I think this series has been a joy to watch.
Yeah, aside from that and the Porzingis ejection in game 1, come on, refs, what are you doing?
I know.
But yeah, no, it's been great. And I think to speak on the Luka injury, I think the way that Dallas has been playing without Luka has honestly been pretty okay. They've been keeping in it with the Clippers during the Burke minutes where he's running the point. And Burke is playing outstandingly well. He's playing good defense and he's getting to the rim quite well. The problem is he just doesn't command the same kind of gravity that Luka does. And a big part of the shots that Dallas opens up come from Luka's gravity.
Yeah.
So even if Burke is playing very dangerously, I don't think the Clippers are going to give him the same respect that they give Luka, and that just has to limit the offense in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the big issues and big differences between these two teams is even if the bench for Dallas has been playing really well, and during the regular season they were, I think, second in the league in terms of point differential for a bench, Dallas just doesn't have the wing defenders to keep up with a team like Los Angeles, which has 3-4 really good wings that you got to defend constantly. It's like, other than Dorian Finney-Smith, they don't really have anyone good to throw at Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Marcus Morris.
It's definitely a limitation. It's like you basically have to pick your battles there. You put Dorian Finney-Smith on Kawhi, and then the other two, you just hope that they have a bad game in a way. Like, I don't know, who was even the matchup for Paul George?
Well, they've been putting Dorian Finney-Smith on Paul George, and they've been playing Kleber on Kawhi.
Wow.
Which I think actually makes sense if you think about it, because so much of Kawhi's game comes from mid-range and low post-ups. And if you're going to use Finney-Smith on one of the wings, you might as well put him on the less physical wing, which is Paul George, and have somebody who can take a beating on Kawhi. But the problem is like, Kawhi Leonard's just able to swing past Kleber really easily. Kleber can't keep up with him.
Kawhi is a monster right now.
Yeah.
He's going, in game 3, he was playing out of control. He was just getting to the basket and dunking viciously at will.
Yeah.
There's nothing they could do to stop them.
Like, guys were literally bouncing off of him like bullets off of Superman.
Yeah. No,
it was crazy.
The only thing I will say is a saving grace is that playoff P, quote unquote, what was it? He's gone like 1 of 10 from behind the arc or something like that in some of the games.
Paul George?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that I thought was interesting about this series was after getting beaten in Game 2, the Clippers changed up their starting lineup. They still don't have Beverly, which I think has really hurt them. He's just such a complementary piece to the starting lineup where you can have a point guard that doesn't need the ball in his hands next to such ball-dominant players like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But they threw Shamet into the starting lineup instead of Reggie Jackson. And I think it just opened things up a little bit better for the offense, right? Because Shamet is similar to Patrick Beverly in that he doesn't need the ball that much either. You can kind of spot him up. You can run him off of off-ball screens. And Reggie Jackson really is a ball-dominant point guard.
Yeah.
So much of his game is pull-up threes, is driving and attacking the basket. So I thought that was really interesting, and it clearly worked out for them.
Yeah, definitely. Shamet had a great game. Although Jackson didn't play badly when he was starting.
Yeah.
He played pretty well, but it definitely unlocked another level of the team, and I think probably gave Shamit a little bit of the confidence that he needed to start playing well again, because there was a pretty long stretch where Shamit was not playing very well. And I can understand why they would put Reggie Jackson ahead of him, but great move from Doc Rivers. That's like a galaxy brain move, I think, to take a guy who had like a really good game when you started him and replace him with a guy that's been playing terribly for a long time, and then give him like the best game he's had in ages.
It was a brilliant move by Rivers. It's one of those moves too where when it happened, I was like, oh, duh. That makes so much sense,
yeah.
You know? But I didn't think about that myself, you know?
But I definitely don't see the series going in Dallas's favor, especially without Luka. I think they'll put up a good fight. Definitely, I think they'll win another one, hopefully. You know, we can't just have all of the series end in like 4 games.
You know, the NBA doesn't want that to happen.
That's for sure. Yeah, that would be a very disappointing round one, considering how much hype there was and how much parity there is in the league this season. To just see that, oh no, the teams that we expected to win won every single one of them. Aside from, I guess, Utah, Denver, that could be an upset.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that one of these series goes to at least 6 games. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, come on, guys. Come on, all the losers. Let's get some fight in there.
All right. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a morose podcast in a way.
It felt like we were airing grievances.
Yeah, but unfortunately that's just the way it is sometimes, and we'll see what happens in the next few games. Maybe some of these teams will turn them around. I think the ones that are 3-0, we can already probably guess what way that's going to go.
Yeah, and just going forward for the pod, we've got another episode planned for tomorrow where we're going to be doing some content that's not on the NBA bubble. We're going to be talking about some of the coaching fires, some of the GM fires, our initial reactions to the NBA draft lottery, and what that could mean for teams going into the future. And I think we're going to put the season recap series on hold for the time being. We've got some ideas to tweak that, but for now we're going to try to do more current event analysis and just take it from there.
Yep, so stay tuned.
Away team out.